When someone's deep feelings for another person begin to fade, it's not always marked by dramatic outbursts like loud arguments, sudden departures, or insistent demands for personal space. In reality, this process often unfolds much more subtly and silently. Initially, the changes are almost imperceptible, and without careful attention, one can easily miss the earliest signals, those moments when the emotional connection starts to weaken, even if outward appearances and daily routines remain unchanged. This isn't about theatrical scenes, mutual recriminations, or trying to read someone's mind. The essence lies in gaining clarity, as waning affection often leaves a distinct, albeit subtle imprint. It's a consistent pattern of behavioral shifts, increasing emotional distance, and diminishing attachment that reveals the true state of affairs, even when no words are spoken. This discussion will explore 5 subtle yet highly telling indicators that often emerge in the early stages of fading feelings. These observations are not speculative, they are rooted in carefully studied emotional patterns identified through the analysis of long-term unions, marital relationships, and close partnerships. By the end of this material, readers will gain a clearer understanding of the true situation, grasp key aspects, and be able to determine their next steps. It's crucial to read to the end, as one of these often overlooked signs can fundamentally alter your perception of current relationships. Everyone deserves sincerity, both from others and towards themselves. Therefore, let's take a closer look at how love, when it begins to leave hearts, almost always announces its departure with the same silent signals. Sign 1. Fading curiosity. One of the earliest and least noticeable indicators that someone's feelings are weakening is a clear decline in interest in the other person's inner world. Not long ago, this person might have genuinely asked about a doctor's visit, the grandchildren's activities, or even how you slept last night. Now, however, when you start to speak, their gaze barely leaves other objects. They no longer ask follow-up questions or show genuine interest in the small stories and events that make up daily life. This change isn't merely due to absent-mindedness or being overly busy, it stems from a deep emotional detachment. Consider the story of Edna and Paul, whose marriage spanned almost 40 years. Edna, by all accounts, used to share everything with Paul, from news of roses blooming again and the neighbor's dog's antics to lively discussions in her book club about a new detective novel. Paul, in turn, listened attentively, responding with laughter, nods, and pertinent remarks. However, at a certain point, this dynamic shifted. When Edna began her stories, Paul barely looked away from the TV screen, offered vague replies, or simply fell silent. Edna felt this change intuitively, even before she could articulate it. She sensed the oppressive silence that had grown between them. It wasn't just a lack of dialogue, it was a profound absence of genuine interest. When someone genuinely loves, they strive to fully immerse themselves in the other's world, wanting to understand even the smallest details. They remember important events and commitments, showing genuine concern for what might have upset that person this morning. Yet, as this care and engagement fade, the process of emotional detachment begins. Notably, this process is rarely accompanied by outbursts of anger. More often, it arrives with a growing silence, a kind of emotional void that creates a feeling of deep loneliness, even when both individuals are in the same room. And here's the bitter truth. People stop asking questions not because the other person has become boring or their stories have lost their novelty. They stop because they no longer feel emotionally invested. The person gradually becomes background noise, ceasing to be a central figure in their daily life. This might sound harsh, but if you start to feel your voice no longer resonates, perhaps it's time to ask yourself important questions. When exactly did this interest fade, and why did it go unnoticed before? Because when someone's feelings wane, it's not always expressed in words. Much more often, it manifests in what they no longer ask about, and what they seemingly no longer wish to hear. Sign 2. Decreased tolerance. When a person's feelings begin to wane, one of the first qualities to disappear is often their patience. What once prompted a smile, laughter, or a gentle remark now suddenly triggers irritation. You might retell a familiar story or ask a perfectly ordinary question about, for instance, a schedule or groceries, only to receive a deep sigh, a sharp tone, or a cold, distant look that unmistakably conveys, "Why are you bothering me?" What was previously perceived as understanding and leniency now feels like walking on thin ice, where every misstep could lead to undesirable consequences. Recall Helen, 76, who was always a bit forgetful. Her husband, Richard, used to treat this trait with good-natured irony, readily helping her find her glasses or reminding her for the 5th time where she'd left her phone. This was an integral part of their life together, their unique rhythm. However, over time, everything changed. Suddenly, Richard began snapping at her, muttering under his breath, or demonstratively rolling his eyes. One day, when she asked him to help her log into her online banking, he simply cut her off. "You need to figure it out yourself." Helen didn't forget that moment, not because it was dramatic or scandalous, but because it starkly contrasted with Richard's usual behavior. When someone feels deep affection, they show leniency and tolerance. They are aware of your quirks, habits, and vulnerabilities, and they navigate them delicately. But when love fades, even the smallest requests begin to feel like burdensome demands. This change is subtle yet immensely powerful. Where understanding once reigned, resistance now emerges. It's not that you've made a mistake, but rather that this person has begun to emotionally distance themselves, and patience often becomes the first thread to break in that connection. You might start to doubt yourself, asking, "Am I too demanding? Am I asking too much?" But the truth is, the problem isn't your needs, it's the other person's diminished desire to be with you. They are no longer emotionally invested in the relationship, and this manifests in their tone of voice, how they interrupt, the eye rolls you notice, and even the oppressive silence that follows a perfectly ordinary question. Do not ignore this change. It's not just a bad mood or temporary stress, it could be a clear sign that their heart no longer belongs to you as it once did. And if you constantly feel like a burden rather than an equal partner, that is a reality you deserve to acknowledge. Sign 3, lack of shared time. As love begins to fade, so does the time spent together. This isn't about calendar hours or days, but about time that feels shared, meaningful, and consciously chosen. You'll notice this person stops making plans with you, not because they're genuinely busy, but because they lack the desire to spend time together. Previously, they might have sat beside you while watching your favorite TV shows or joined you on the porch in the evenings. Now they prefer to linger in other rooms, leave the house more often without asking if you'd like to join them. And when they do stay, their body is physically present, but their attention is entirely absent. Consider Ray, 68, who for years cherished his morning ritual with his wife, Linda. They would drink coffee side by side at the kitchen table, discussing the weather, the news, or simply enjoying the quiet. It didn't matter what they talked about, the main thing was being together. But gradually, this changed. Linda started waking earlier and going for long walks alone. The coffee was ready, but the table remained empty. She explained it as needing time for herself. Ray understood, until this behavior became a daily occurrence. He began to feel like a guest in his own marriage. When someone genuinely loves you, they make time, because time is a form of love. But when that love weakens, so does their desire to be near you. Often, they won't offer any explanations. They might say they're tired, they have things to do, or say nothing at all. But the truth is, people always find time for what truly matters to them. And if you constantly find yourself alone, even when they're in the same house, it might not be accidental. They stop inviting you to do small things, don't ask about your day, start saying, "Go ahead, or I'll just stay here." And with each such quiet decision, the distance between you steadily grows. This doesn't require a big argument or a dramatic announcement of separation. A few mornings spent apart, a few dinners eaten alone, a few nights where they fall asleep with their back turned are enough. If you feel abandoned in a relationship that once felt shared, do not ignore that feeling. Because when someone no longer loves you, the time they dedicate to you doesn't just shrink, it vanishes. And that kind of silence speaks louder than any words. Sign 4, emotional detachment. There comes a point, often subtly, when a person stops letting you into not just their daily world, but their inner world as well. You used to be the one they confided in about their worries, shared hopes, and thoughts on life, work, or family. But now, it seems they wear an invisible mask. They respond with superficial comments, saying things like "everything's fine" or "don't worry about it." Yet, you sense that something has changed, that something is hidden behind the closed doors of their soul. And most disturbingly, you no longer feel like a safe haven for them, a place where they can be completely open. Consider the story of Gloria, 71. Her partner, Samuel, had always been completely open with her. He would pour out his heart after a long phone call with his brother, share his fears about an upcoming knee surgery. He even called her his best friend, entrusting her with his most intimate thoughts. However, over the past year, everything drastically changed. When his cousin died, Gloria only learned about it a week later. When she asked why he hadn't shared the news immediately, Samuel simply replied, "I didn't want to burden you." But Gloria intuitively knew that wasn't the real reason. It was easier for him to bear that burden alone than to invite her into his inner world and share his pain. Such a shift doesn't happen instantly. However, when someone's feelings fade, they gradually begin to close emotional doors. They might still talk, yes, but these conversations no longer touch upon truly important matters or genuine experiences. You start to feel more like a roommate than a full partner. Important decisions are made without your input, and thoughts once shared over dinner are now quietly kept in their head. And you don't even realize what's missing until you feel the distance between you steadily growing. People don't just stop talking, they stop entrusting you with their truth. And this hurts far more than mere silence, because it means they no longer see you as the person to turn to when life becomes difficult or uncertain. They might still be kind, wash dishes, sit next to you in church, but the warmth is gone, the intimacy vanished. And when you try to reach out to them, when you ask what's wrong or try to reconnect, they withdraw. Not always with anger, but with clear avoidance. They say, "I'm just tired," or "you wouldn't understand." But what they're really saying is, "I've already shut down. I've already started to disconnect." Sign 5. Physical withdrawal. When emotional intimacy begins to fade, the body often follows suit, reflecting internal changes. You'll notice fewer hugs, less eye contact, and the disappearance of those lingering touches on the arm or gentle kisses on the forehead without a clear reason. Even sitting together on the couch starts to feel like two people sharing a space rather than a deep connection. For many couples, physical intimacy is the unspoken language that sustains love. So when it disappears, it's not just loneliness, it's a feeling as if love has physically receded, abandoning the relationship. Recall Martin and Alice, whose marriage lasted 45 years. For most of their lives, they were naturally affectionate with each other, holding hands during walks, rubbing each other's shoulders after a long day. Martin always pulled Alice in for a quick kiss before bed. But after his retirement, something changed. He became quieter, more distant. He would turn away in bed, brush off her hand when she tried to place it on his knee while watching TV. He stopped initiating any touch, and gradually, Alice stopped reaching out too. Not because she didn't love him, but because she no longer knew her place in their relationship. Physical touch is a kind of language. It says, "I'm here, I care, I still choose you." And when someone no longer loves you, they stop speaking that language. They avoid touch, pull away, stop holding your hand in public, flinch slightly when you lean in for a kiss. It's subtle, but it wounds deeply, and the longer it continues, the harder it is to bridge that gap. It's not about passion or romance, not always. It's about presence, reassurance, the feeling that even in silence, you are still wanted. When that's absent, it's easy to start doubting everything, wondering if you did something wrong. But often, it's not about what you did, but what they feel and how they no longer feel drawn to you emotionally or physically. If you've noticed the warmth leaving the room when they enter, or if your hugs feel more like polite gestures than genuine connection, it might be time to face the truth. Because when someone stops loving you, the body knows and begins to show you, creating distance step by step. Concluding thoughts. Now that you've reviewed these 5 signs, take a moment to reflect. Perhaps one stood out particularly, or perhaps all of them did. It's important not just to recognize these signs, but to understand what they mean personally for you. Because when love begins to fade, we often feel it intuitively before we see clear manifestations in words or actions. Yet, we doubt ourselves, downplay what's happening, and convince ourselves not to overreact. But the truth is, emotional distance always leaves clues, through silence, avoidance, and a diminishing sense of being truly known. If you've felt this shift, if you've wondered if what you're experiencing is real, chances are, it is. You are not imagining it. You are feeling the difference between being chosen and being tolerated. This is not something to ignore. It's something to explore with honesty, courage, and compassion, both for yourself and for the relationship. None of this means all love is gone or that nothing can be fixed. But the first step is always to see the situation clearly. Because once you recognize these patterns, you can stop blaming yourself. You can free yourself from the burden of a one-sided connection and start asking yourself truly important questions. Do I feel emotionally safe here? Am I treated with due care and attention? Do I feel that I am still important to this person? Always remember that your inner peace and well-being are just as significant as anyone else's comfort. And while it can be incredibly painful to admit that someone's love is fading, it is far more agonizing to continue pretending it isn't, ignoring the obvious signals. You deserve real, genuine love, the kind that shows up in actions, listens attentively, maintains a lively curiosity about your world, and continues to consciously choose you day after day.